Hi guys, Rez here standing in for Robbie. Tottenham 1, Wolves 2, and what can we say about that game? I'm sad to have to say that game was up there if that's the term, with our worst performances this season. And the reverse fixture earlier in the season was also one of our poorer performances. Wolves have done the double over us this season. We've made that easy for them. That's not a pleasant thing to have to say. It wasn't our defence as a unit that was primarily at fault for what happened, although Royal, having performed fairly well when called upon this season, seemed to revert to the Royal of old, which was not what anyone wanted to see. Of the other three, Romero and Davis played well, and Van der Ven again showed his class time and again. Vicario really couldn't do much about the two goals and actually did well to hold Wolves to just the two goals. I think where we lost that game was in the abysmal display further up the pitch. The midfield and the forward line just seemed totally bereft of creativity, guile or craft. The passing was absolutely atrocious, with turnover after turnover after turnover. And the worst of it is that Wolves weren't much cop themselves. They kept giving the ball away too. I mean, the game almost descended into a contest to see who could give the ball away most cheaply. And we still lost that contest. But if it hadn't been for just how poor Wolves themselves were, we would have been dead and buried at half-time. The only part of our game that I saw that seemed to have some impetus behind it was in that first minute of the second half when we scored, and then it just evaporated. Part of me thinks it was complacency, that they thought they could stroll through against Wolves, and it didn't turn out that way. And the usual Spurs disease was fully on show too, an almost pathological fear of the first-time pass, which we were using to such deadly extent earlier in the season. Time and time again, we saw the ball come to one of our midfielders or forwards and watched while they trapped it, looked up, sent a text message, balanced their checkbooks, organised their pension plan, took a few steps forward and then passed the ball to a teammate standing 6 yards away from them. The only first-time passes I remember seeing were backwards ones, and just the sedentary pace of the play gave Wolves all the time they needed to get back into position, soak up the pressure and launch a counter-attack, which they did twice. And all the while we were huffing and puffing and trying to walk the ball into the net instead of pulling the trigger and maybe, testing the goalkeeper a little bit more. Movement was sorely lacking. Whenever anyone did make a run, they seemed to either be ignored by their teammate or the pass was intercepted. Moaning so much, I really am. It's very difficult to find any positives in that. So apologies for that. However, it has to be borne in mind that the team is still in transition. It's easy to say that Ange has had enough time. Ange has had 7 months, but that's precisely the point. He's only had 7 months. The real disappointment on Saturday was Sonny. That was one of the worst performances I've seen from him and was not befitting of the captain's armband at all. I'm actually pretty angry with him for that performance because, I'm sorry, he isn't allowed to have a day off being the captain. The captain has to be the hardest fighter on the pitch. But all I saw from him on Saturday was someone in a funk. That was not a leadership display, and the same really can also be said of Madders, although Madders was being a bit more vocal than Sonny. But Sonny was just not on it at all for me. Terrible display. Anyone for me who might say, well, he's got the hangover from the Asian Cup, that's a valid comment, but unfortunately that's not what a captain is allowed to do. If you are affected by that sort of thing, you've got no place being a captain. That's not me saying that Sonny shouldn't be captain, but it's not an excuse that a captain can use. I'm not saying he has used it, but if anyone was to defend him on that basis, that for me isn't valid comment. So yeah, again, apologies that but there was just so little to be positive about. Even the crowd at the stadium was subdued, and I can understand why, as it was just really dispiriting to watch. The last 20 minutes, I spent just sort of sat back in my seat, just numb to it all, because I just didn't see anything from us. I'd love to be able to put a positive spin on that performance, but it really isn't possible. So look, we just have to dust ourselves off and go again. My hope is that the players are so angry with themselves that they never let that happen again, especially not at home, and that they also learn from it. The defence did well, as well as they could, but the others need to tell themselves that that kind of performance is below the standards that they're capable of, and set themselves the target of making sure they never fall below it again. So that's my little debrief for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm sure Robbie will be back with you again soon. In the meantime, thanks for watching, take care, and as always, come on you Spurs.